There are some UAP cases that become famous because of video. A blurry object on a screen, a military clip released by the Pentagon, a thermal image, a radar track, a cockpit recording. But there is another kind of case, a case where the story is not built around what the public can see, it is built around what trained witnesses said they saw, what investigators could rule out, what they could not rule out, and what remains unresolved even after official analysis. This is one of those cases. A sensitive national security site, 6 federal law enforcement special agents, 2 days of observation, glowing orange objects, smaller red objects appearing to launch from them, multiple viewing angles, repeated patterns, reports of silent motion, military aircraft in the area, infrared flares, radar data, ADS-B data, flight logs, AARO analysis, and a conclusion that is not dramatic in the way people expect. Not aliens confirmed, not case closed, but something more interesting. AARO could plausibly explain part of it, but not all of it. Roughly 60% of the reported activity could fit known military aircraft and flare activity, but approximately 40% remains unresolved after first stage analysis. And for that unresolved portion, AARO used a phrase that deserves serious attention: unrecognized technology. Not proven technology, not non-human technology, not extraterrestrial technology, but unrecognized technology as a pending provisional hypothesis based on testimony, based on exclusion, and limited by the absence of technical data. That is the tension of this case. A serious witness pool, a sensitive location, a strange repeated pattern, some ordinary explanation, some unresolved residue, and a question that cuts to the heart of modern disclosure. What happens when a UAP case is credible enough to remain open, but not evidence-rich enough to prove what happened? Welcome to UFO to UAP Explained. I am your host Matt Tones, and today we investigate Orbs Launching Orbs, the Western U.S. UAP case AARO still cannot resolve. Let's begin. This episode is based on a set of UAP-related records from the 2026 US UFO Files release. The central document is an AARO case analysis update dated 5th of June 2026. Its subject line is direct. All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Case Analysis Update. Western U.S. Event Orbs Launching Orbs. The incident itself reportedly occurred over 2 days in October 2023 near a sensitive national security site in the western United States. According to the AARO memorandum, 6 United States federal law enforcement special agents reported observing unidentified anomalous phenomena at approximately dusk. The agents were not casual skywatchers. The document specifically notes AARO's favorable assessment of the agents' contextual awareness of the operational environment and their overall familiarity with U.S. military systems. That matters, because this case is not just another distant light in the sky story. It involves federal law enforcement personnel operating near a sensitive site, describing phenomena with similar features from multiple viewing angles. But the case also begins with a major weakness: no video, no photographs, no technical data collected during the incident. That means this episode has to hold two truths at the same time. The witnesses appear to have been taken seriously by AARO, but the evidence is still largely narrative, and that distinction matters, because the modern UAP question is no longer just, did someone credible see something? It is, what can the evidence actually support? Question for you: if a UAP case involves trained federal agents but no video, no photos, and no instrument data collected during the event, how much weight should that case carry? Drop your answer in the comments, and please subscribe. Now let's describe what was reported. The agents described what the AARO document calls a repeated pattern of behavior. A luminous orange mother orb would appear. It would reportedly produce smaller red orbs. Those red objects would move away. Then the orange object would disappear. This allegedly happened repeatedly over several hours. The orange mother orbs were described as appearing for 1 to 2 seconds. The red orbs were described as emerging in a cluster of 2 to 4. The agents described various movement profiles, including what appeared to be coordinated horizontal motion and apparent changes in altitude. Some red orbs reportedly persisted only for seconds, but in at least one instance, a red orb was described as remaining stationary above a ridgeline for several hours. The agents also described the phenomena as silent. That is the basic case. Orange object appears, red objects emerge, pattern repeats, multiple witnesses, multiple angles, sensitive sight. No technical recording by the witnesses, and AARO did not dismiss it outright. The agency noted that human optical estimation is limited, especially in low light conditions when distance, speed, size, and direction are all difficult to judge. That is important because one of the most common mistakes in UAP cases is overconfidence. A witness may sincerely estimate distance and size, but without a reference point, those estimates can be wrong. A small object close by may appear large and distant. A distant object may appear nearby. A flare may seem stationary. A light may appear to move in ways created by observer motion, terrain, angle, or fading intensity. A single object may simply be too far away for sound to carry. AARO explicitly acknowledges these limitations. But then the document takes a turn. It says contextual factors supersede those limitations. In plain English, yes, witness perception is limited, but this case still deserves attention. Why? Because AARO identified 3 contextual factors. First, the reported shape and movement characteristics align closely with other reported incidents in the Western United States region. Second, the reporting agents had strong contextual awareness of the operational environment and familiarity with U.S. military systems. Third, the agents' descriptions were highly consistent, including potentially anomalous features observed from multiple viewing angles. That is what makes this case useful for an episode. It is not strong because the evidence is perfect. It is strong because the uncertainty is documented. AARO is not saying trust every detail. AARO is saying the case has enough consistency, context, and similarity to other reports to justify further investigation. That is the modern UAP standard beginning to appear. Not belief, not dismissal, assessment. Now let's move into the explanations AARO considered. The most important one is military aircraft dispensing flares. This is where the case becomes more complex. Military aircraft were operating in the area. The historical flight logs confirm that U.S. military aircraft were equipped with and actively deployed infrared countermeasure flares as part of a standard exercise. AARO found that some of the reported features aligned with known characteristics of certain military infrared flares. The positions, perceived direction of travel, and time of observation aligned strongly with historical radar and ADS-B data. This led AARO to assess that approximately 60% of the reported activity was plausibly attributed to military aircraft, and that is a major point. A large portion of the case may have been a conventional explanation, but here is the problem. The agents were professionally familiar with the visual characteristics of military flares, and they reportedly stated that the phenomena did not exhibit those characteristics. AARO responded with nuance. The specific types of flares carried by aircraft in the area may differ visually from standard illumination flares, so the agent's familiarity with ordinary flares did not necessarily rule out infrared countermeasure flares. That is exactly the kind of careful analysis this subject needs. Witnesses may be credible, but witnesses may not recognize every variant of every military system. At the same time, known military activity may explain some of the event, but not necessarily all of it. This is where AARO identified the unresolved portion. For approximately 40% of the reported observations, radar and ADS-B data indicated that no known aircraft were active within the observer's estimated line of sight from the ground, and in at least one instance, the reported stationary red orb lasting several hours was physically incompatible with the burn time and descent rate of any known military flare. That is the heart of this episode, not the 60% that may be explained, the 40% that remains unresolved. Question for you. When an official UAP case is partially explained, do you focus more on the 60% that fits ordinary activity or the 40% that still does not? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Now, AARO considered several other hypotheses. The first was misidentified military aircraft exhaust. AARO ruled this out. The reported characteristics did not align with standard aircraft exhaust. Although military aircraft were present, their altitudes were too high for standard exhaust to appear as orange orbs. The hypothesis was also inconsistent with the reported silence, loitering behavior, and apparent launching of red orbs. The second was unmanned aerial vehicles. AARO assessed this as unlikely. Why? Because at least one reported red orb appeared to persist for several hours. That kind of loitering time exceeds the standard battery capacity and operational limits of typical military and commercial multi-rotor UAV systems. Now, that does not mean no drone or unmanned system could ever be involved, but based on the described behavior, AARO did not see typical UAVs as a strong fit. The third was foreign intelligence activity. AARO assessed that as highly unlikely. The agency consulted with intelligence community partners and said it could not definitively rule out an entirely novel foreign collection platform, but the reported movement profiles diverged enough from known adversary systems that AARO considered the foreign intelligence hypothesis highly unlikely. That is a careful phrase, not impossible, but highly unlikely. And in serious UAP analysis, that difference matters. The fourth category was natural or environmental phenomena. AARO also assessed this as unlikely. It considered meteorological phenomena, atmospheric anomalies, temperature inversions, refractive effects, stars, planets, meteors, satellite flaring, rocketry, and other space-based phenomena. The weather was reportedly generally clear, with seasonal temperatures and typical levels of light pollution for the area. The multiple viewing angles made it unlikely that misidentified celestial bodies accounted for the phenomena. Meteors and satellite flares did not fit the reported persistence of some observations. Bolides usually have characteristic tails, which did not align with the reported morphology of the orange mother orbs. Again, this does not prove anything extraordinary, but it shows the value of elimination. AARO was not simply saying strange lights, therefore unknown. It was checking conventional categories and asking whether they fit. Some did, some did not. Now we arrive at the most sensitive hypothesis, blue force. In military language, blue force means friendly or US capability. AARO assessed US capability deconfliction as plausible but inconclusive. That means one possibility is that some of the reported phenomena may have involved US military technology, test activity, developmental programs, or operational capabilities. AARO conducted a comprehensive review across the Department of War and the intelligence community to determine whether the reported features matched any US program, test event, or operational capability. Its conclusion was interesting. AARO assessed that the characteristics described by the agents aligned with certain US military technologies, but historical records were inconclusive about whether those technologies were present at the time and place of the event, and no single Blue Force capability fully accounted for all of the reported characteristics. This is one of the most important parts of the case, because it shows how UAP can sit inside the gray zone between unexplained and classified. A report may not be alien, it may not be foreign, it may not be natural, it may not be a typical drone, it may involve some US technology. But if the records do not confirm presence, if the system does not explain every feature, and if the data is incomplete, the case stays unresolved. That is the modern disclosure problem. The public wants clean categories: known aircraft, balloon, drone, flares, adversary system, natural phenomena, unknown. But real cases may not fit so neatly. They may involve overlapping explanations, some flares, some perception limits, some missing data, some classified technology possibilities, some unresolved observations, and perhaps a witness narrative that remains difficult to fully reconcile. Now let's talk about unrecognized technology. AARO's primarily exclusion-based hypothesis was that unrecognized technology may account for up to 40% of the phenomena associated with the incident. That sounds dramatic, but the next sentence is just as important. AARO stated that this provisional assessment was based solely on narrative testimony and the elimination of competing hypotheses. It was not substantiated by technical data or physical evidence. That is the line that defines the entire case. Unrecognized technology may account for the unresolved portion, but the evidence does not prove it. This is exactly where responsible UAP analysis has to live. We should not ignore the phrase unrecognized technology, but we also should not inflate it into alien craft. We should not dismiss trained witnesses, but we also should not treat testimony as equivalent to multi-sensor evidence. We should not pretend the flare explanation solves everything, but we also should not ignore that it may explain a majority of the activity. This is what makes the Western U.S. Orb case useful. It is not simple. It forces us to think. Question for you. When AARO uses the phrase unrecognized technology, do you read that as a major disclosure signal or simply as a cautious placeholder for something not yet identified? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Now let's bring in one of the witness narratives. The first-hand account from Witness 1 is remarkable. The witness describes reports from other teams on the first night, saying they saw strange lights moving in groups miles away. The witness did not personally see anything specific that first night, but on the second night, while driving through a valley area with another team member, they suddenly noticed a large glowing ball to the right. The witness initially estimated it at 500 to 600 meters away, then later used a rangefinder to put the distance to the hillside at about 1,100 meters. They described the object as close to the hill face, a well-defined circle of light, bright in the dusk, a swirly pattern of bright lava, no visible structure at the edges, no glow on the hillside or ground behind it or below it. Through binoculars, it appeared to have something like a line or spindle below it, possibly touching the hillside, although the witness could not verify this. They watched it for 1 or 2 minutes. Then, in the witness's words, it did not fade out. They just could not see it anymore. No particular sound was heard. The witness estimated the circle could have been 20 feet or more in diameter. Then the pattern repeated. About 20 minutes later, another similar object lit up the sky above another hillside. It appeared for only a second or two, then it was gone. While it was lit, 3 red lights seemed to fall out of it and away from it. They appeared evenly spaced. Then they moved quickly. They disappeared from sight. A flash appeared over the horizon at the same time. Then, about 20 minutes later, the experience repeated again. Another orange ball appeared, and this time the red dots left in a different direction. One straight out, one horizontally upward, one horizontally downward, forming a vertical alignment of 3 lights. That witness narrative closely matches the mother orb description in the AARO analysis. Orange appearance, red objects emerging, repetition, flashes, dusk conditions, no clear sound, but the same narrative also illustrates the evidence problem. The witness is estimating, distance is uncertain, size is uncertain, no footage is taken, no instrument data is collected. The description is detailed but still observational, and in UAP investigation, a detailed memory is not the same as a measurement. Then the account becomes stranger. Hours later, while driving, the witness described what at first appeared to be a car ahead on the road. One taillight appeared red, one appeared white, one round, one square. As another vehicle approached from the opposite direction, the car reportedly moved off the road to the right. The oncoming vehicle passed, apparently without reacting. The object did not bounce or move with the terrain. It seemed to hover. It did not kick up dust. When the witness stopped, the lights turned off, and a darker object appeared to move upward and away behind them. Later, the witness described seeing dust and a thick spider web-like material floating in front of them, followed by what looked like the same object in a more vertical orientation. They said it was difficult to define the shape and borders visually. It was about 15 to 20 feet in the air, and the key phrase is this. The witness said they could see a star through the object, as well as the crest of the hill and some vegetation. It was almost looking at something through water. That is an extraordinary description, but again we must be careful. It is one witness narrative. It is not technical proof of invisibility, cloaking, exotic material, or non-human technology. But as a storytelling element, it is powerful because it links directly to questions your recent episodes have explored. Sensor limits, optical effects, invisibility, electromagnetic theory, perception. The difference between seeing something and measuring it. The case sits right at that intersection. Now let's bring in another document. A narrative from a senior U.S. intelligence officer describes a late 2025 helicopter mission connected to orb-like sightings at a test range. This is not necessarily the same October 2023 event, but it is thematically linked by the folder's Western U.S. orb material. In that account, a senior intelligence officer, a colleague, and two pilots departed a joint operations center in a helicopter. Their mission was to investigate loud thuds in the mountains on a test range, which coincided with UAP sightings reported over previous nights. They searched remote mountain areas for debris or objects that might explain the orb-like sightings. The account says they found debris from rockets and projectiles from years of weapons testing. They also found a large cave entrance, but no safe landing spot nearby. Later, after sunset, the pilots used FLIR and night vision goggles, while the intelligence officer used the naked eye. The Joint Operations Center then reported radar hits several miles uprange in the same area where UAP activity had been observed on prior nights. The helicopter altered course to intercept. The account describes a series of close UAP encounters lasting over an hour. Ground teams reportedly saw a super hot object on FLIR, low to the ground, moving at high speed, splitting into two and changing direction. The ground team then radioed that the object rose from the ground, approached within 10 feet of the helicopter, dropped below it, and sped away. The pilots observed through night vision goggles and reportedly saw it split into two as a smaller object emerged before it accelerated out of sight. Later, the crew saw countless orange orbs swarming against the backdrop of a mountain. They then saw two large orange, white, or yellow-scented orbs flare up side by side close to the helicopter. More orbs formed beneath them in what was described as a T formation. The orbs dimmed in reverse order and vanished. The account also describes similar orbs appearing above fighter jets, matching their speed and flight path before dimming and disappearing. This is one of the most cinematic documents in the set, but it needs careful handling. It is a narrative statement. It is dramatic. It involves radar, FLIR, night vision, aircraft, fighters, and ground teams. But as with the Western U.S. AARO case, the key question is, what technical data is available for independent review? A dramatic official narrative can open an investigation, but it does not close one. That is the reoccurring theme. The files show us something important. The UAP problem is no longer only public claims, it is inside government processes. Witness statements, AARO case assessments, flight logs, radar references, ADS-B checks, intelligence community consultation, hypothesis testing, and unresolved categories. But the files also show us the limits. No public raw sensor package, no complete video evidence, no physical material, no definitive conclusion. This is modern UAP disclosure in miniature. A lot more than nothing, a lot less than proof. Now let's examine what this case teaches us about AARO. AARO's approach in the Western U.S. orb case is more sophisticated than simply debunking. It preserved the witness language. It identifies perception limits. It checks military flight logs. It checks radar. It checks ADS-B data. It considers flares. It considers UAVs. It considers foreign activity. It considers blue force deconfliction. It considers environmental and space-based possibilities. It identifies what is plausible, what is unlikely, what is ruled out, what remains unresolved, and what needs more data. That is a kind of structure the UAP field has needed for decades, but it also exposes the problem. AARO can only analyze the data that exists. If no one collected video, photo, or technical data during the event, the case is limited before analysis begins. That is why AARO's next step matters. The document says AARO intends to integrate scientific modeling capabilities from partner agencies, expertise from scientific and academic institutions, and insights from multi-domain, multispectral data exploitation techniques to inform its assessment of this and other reported UAP cases in the Western United States region. That sentence is important. Multi-domain, multispectral, scientific modeling, academic expertise, partner agencies, data exploitation. This is not old UFO investigation language. This is modern UAP infrastructure language. It means the future of the case is not just witness interviews, it is modeling, sensor correlation, broader data sets, scientific expertise, better collection protocols. AARO also says it will seek opportunities to broaden relationships with partners possessing relevant technical and domain expertise, enhance blue and red force deconfliction, and optimize data collection protocols to incorporate more diverse sources. That is the real lesson. This case does not only ask what happened in October 2023, it asks whether the government is building the systems needed to answer the next case better. Question for you. If AARO had to prioritize one improvement for future UAP cases, should it be better sensors, faster reporting, independent scientific review, or more public transparency? Tell me in the comments. Now let's complete this case with the Pantex Unidentified Object Report from 2015. This is a separate incident, but it helps show why sensitive site UAP cases matter. The Pantex report describes an unidentified object detected by the ground surveillance radar system near the Pantex plant in Texas. Pantex is connected to the U.S. nuclear weapons complex, which makes any unknown object near the facility a serious security matter. According to the report, on the 1st of September 2015, at approximately 0710 hours, the ground surveillance radar system identified an unknown object flying west of Pantex facilities in a northerly trajectory. Protective force personnel responded according to the facility's security incident responses plan for unmanned aerial systems. The object was initially detected near Highway 60, moving north at approximately 10 to 15 miles per hour. Personnel on the ground confirmed the object and followed it by vehicle for several miles until it was no longer visible. The report says plant gates were secured. Patrols moved to protect assets, and local law enforcement was notified when the object moved off-site. Personnel described the object as silent. They could not identify any propulsion system using binoculars. It was reportedly tracked by a crow's camera system on a Bearcat vehicle. The object was described by different observers as diamond-shaped, more rounded at the top, possibly black, silver, red, or blue. Video was obtained and sent to Sandia National Labs for further study, although the report says the video did not provide much detail due to distance. This is a very different case from the Western U.S. Orbs, but it reinforces a major point. Sensitive site incidents are not only about curiosity, they are about security response, radar detection, asset protection, law enforcement notification, evidence preservation, and the difficulty of identifying slow, low, quiet objects near restricted facilities. That is why the Orb case matters, even if the ultimate explanation is ordinary, because the category itself matters. Unknown objects near sensitive sites create real operational questions. The national security concern does not depend on aliens, it depends on uncertainty. Now let's return to the Western U.S. case. How should we interpret it? There are several possible readings. The skeptical reading is this: most of the event was probably military flare activity. The rest may reflect witness perception limits, lack of precise distance measurement, incomplete aircraft correlation, or classified activity that cannot be confirmed publicly. No video, no photos, no physical evidence, and no technical data collected at the scene means the case should remain interesting, but not evidentially strong. That is a fair position. The more open reading is this: multiple federal agents with operational familiarity describe repeated, structured, silent phenomena from multiple angles near a sensitive site. AARO could not fully explain about 40% of the reported observations. Environmental, foreign, UAV, exhaust, and flare explanations did not fully account for everything. AARO left unrecognized technology as a pending hypothesis. That is a fair position. The responsible UFO to UAP position is to hold both. The case is not proof, but it is not nothing. It is a structured, official, unresolved case with enough internal tension to deserve serious analysis. That is where the show should stand. No leap to aliens, no dismissal of witnesses, no blind trust in government conclusions, no inflation of unresolved into extraordinary. Just the evidence. What was reported, what was checked, what was explained, what was not, and what the missing data prevents us from knowing. Now, what would have made this case stronger? First, immediate video. Second, infrared imagery. Third, radar data publicly tied to the specific observations. Fourth, precise location and angle measurements from each witness. Fifth, acoustic data. Sixth, flight logs and flare deployment timing released with enough detail for independent review. Seventh, environmental sensor data. Eighth, a complete chain of custody for all records. Ninth, follow-up modeling. 10th, repeated instrumented observation in the same region. That is the difference between a compelling file and a transformative case. The Western U.S. Orb case is compelling, but it is not transformative, at least not yet. AARO itself leaves room for revision if additional intelligence and data sources become available. That line matters. The case is not closed, it is unresolved. And unresolved means the investigation is not finished. Now, let's think about the phrase Orbs Launching Orbs. It is easy to sensationalize. It sounds almost unbelievable. It creates instant imagery. A mother object, smaller objects, repeated release, silent lights. But the phrase is also dangerous because it may lock the listener into one interpretation. Launching implies an object producing another object. But in low-light observation with flares, aircraft terrain, perspective, and multiple possible light sources, the appearance of launching may not equal physical launching. A light appearing near another light can look like emergence. A flare sequence can look like deployment. A distant aircraft dispensing countermeasures can look like a mother light producing smaller lights. Multiple sources at different distances can look connected. That is why AARO is careful to refer to source-derived descriptive language. It preserves what witnesses said without necessarily endorsing the interpretation. That is an important distinction for the episode. The agents reported orbs launching other orbs. AARO analyzed whether that description could match flares, aircraft, UAVs, environmental phenomena, foreign systems, US capabilities, or unrecognized technology. The job of investigation is not to mock the phrase, and it is not to believe the phrase literally. The job is to test it. That is what modern UAP research must become, a system for testing extraordinary descriptions without either ridiculing or romanticizing them. Now let's connect this to disclosure. This case shows why disclosure is difficult. If the explanation is military flare activity for part of the event, releasing that is straightforward enough. If the explanation may involve blue force capabilities, release becomes harder. If no single capability explains everything, uncertainty remains. If witnesses are credible but data is missing, officials have to say something unsatisfying. If AARO uses the phrase unrecognized technology, the public may hear something more dramatic than AARO intends. And if the public cannot see the raw data, truth becomes fragile. That is the disclosure trap. The government may be doing real analysis, but the public receives fragments, a redacted memo, a narrative statement, a case update, a conclusion, a percentage, a phrase like unrecognized technology, and then everyone interprets the fragments through their existing beliefs. Believers see confirmation, skeptics see weak evidence, researchers see a case quality problem, journalists see a headline, officials see an unresolved file, and the public sees another mystery. That is why the future of UAP disclosure has to be more than file releases. It has to include evidence standards, case grading, clear explanation categories, public methods, a distinction between witness testimony and censored data, a distinction between unresolved and extraordinary, a distinction between classified and unknown, a distinction between not enough information and known explanations tested and failed. The Western U.S. Orb case is a perfect example because it sits in the middle. It is not weak enough to dismiss, it is not strong enough to prove. It is a case about the gap between seriousness and certainty. Now let's close with the central question. What do we do with a case like this? We do not turn it into mythology. We do not use it as a proof of non-human intelligence. The documents do not support that. We also do not pretend it is meaningless. AARO did not treat it as meaningless. The witnesses were taken seriously. The case remained unresolved. AARO considered multiple hypotheses. AARO identified limitations and proposed further investigation. AARO pointed towards scientific modeling, multispectral data, partner agencies, academic expertise, and improved collection protocols. That means the case matters, not because it answers the UAP question, but because it shows what the UAP question has become. It is no longer only what did people see, it is who saw it, where did they see it, what systems were active, what data was collected, what hypotheses were tested, what can be ruled out, what remains unresolved, and what must be built so the next case is not trapped in the same uncertainty. That is the evolution from UFO to UAP, from stories to structured investigation, from sightings to data gaps, from mystery to methodology, from belief to analysis, and perhaps one day from unresolved to understood. Final question for you. Does the Western U.S. Orbs Launching Orbs case make you more confident that AARO is taking UAP seriously, or more concerned that the strongest cases still lack the data needed for public proof? Leave your answer in the comments. This has been UFO to UAP Explained. I am Matt Tones. If you found this episode valuable, follow the show, share it with someone interested in UFO disclosure, AARO, UAP files, orb sightings, military flares, sensitive national security sites, and the future of unexplained aerial phenomena. And remember, the most important part of a UAP case is not always what remains unexplained. Sometimes it is what the investigation reveals about how much we still fail to measure.